little sharper in terms of how coronavirus is impacting America's economy. And that's where we start today's edition of CNN 10. I'm Carl Azus. Since the summer of 2009, when the Great Recession came to an end, the United States gross domestic product had grown in every quarter, every 3-month period of the financial calendar. It was America's longest economic expansion in history, but now, according to many economists, it's over. The U.S. Commerce Department said Wednesday that gross domestic product fell by 4.8% in the first quarter of this year. That's its worst drop since the country was in the midst of the Great Recession in 2008. And it's because of all the closures, shutdowns, and especially the drop in consumer spending brought on by the coronavirus. Consumer spending is the biggest factor in America's GDP. Recession is generally defined as when GDP shrinks for 2 quarters in a row, and economists increasingly believe that one started last month. There's more data on the way. The U.S. government's monthly jobs report is set to come out tomorrow. It'll give estimates on the number of jobs lost and the unemployment rate, the percentage of American workers who don't have a job. But this is a unique situation. It was brought on by sudden shocks of businesses closing and people staying home. So it's hard to say how quickly the economy will recover after coronavirus fears have passed or what it will look like when it does.
Big question for everyone is, when do we reopen?
We will lay out our California-based thinking.
We're in a good spot to move forward.
President Trump revealing the White House's new guidelines for opening up America again.
The federal guidelines call for states to meet specific gating metrics before considering lifting restrictions.
The future will depend on the choices we make. What we do in terms of testing, what we do in terms of monitoring. These gating criteria are intended to indicate that we're on the downward trajectory. We're on the other side of those curves that we've all become so familiar with.
Reopening isn't a magic moment or a date or the moment you get tired of all of this. It's the moment where you can control the epidemic by means other than a shutdown.
The ability to do extensive testing, as we've heard again and again, remains a challenge in many places.
When we reopen, we can't do it with a zero level of risk. The question is, how much risk can you tolerate? The imagery of putting the economy into an induced coma and waking it up is not quite right, because the body deteriorates during the coma. It's a complicated dance because it's not just production which is important, it's also consumption, right? And so we need everything to start moving at the same time in order to have a reasonable economy.
How do you get businesses back up and running? What's the right solution? Trying to maintain social distancing within a workplace, having people wear masks within a workplace, including as well regular testing.
On the manufacturing side, where you can have a certain amount of distancing at work and transport can pick up once again, not crowded airplanes. Of course, we will eventually go through the spectrum of industries and services that can be opened with some distancing to industries where you need much more close contact.
This is going to be a very difficult labor market for a lot of people. When we are able to reopen more of the economy, many of those people will be able to return to work, but others not. So the legacy will be high unemployment for some time. It's not going to be an immediate bounce back.
Going out to restaurants, cafes, other social gathering locations, I suspect what we'll see is fewer tables at greater distance from one another. Just like what we've seen in grocery stores now, where they've been asked to reduce the number of people in a grocery store at any one time to some fraction of their total capacity.
You can't really survive in the same space at 1/3 the customers. Beyond the 2 months or 3 months, if we need to think about how we provide support going forward, it may make sense at that point to say, well, they either have to change, provide delivery services, or to be viable with appropriate amounts of distancing, or, they close down now and open up maybe a year later when we have the vaccine and they become viable once again.
10-second trivia. Bioluminescence, when living organisms produce light, is a form of what? Phosphorescence, chemiluminescence, fluorescence, or crystalloluminescence? Bioluminescence is a form of chemiluminescence, a chemical reaction. Next is a virtual field trip to a sort of virtual landscape. Northlandz, with a Z, is in New Jersey. When it's open, it's a place where you'll find hundreds of tunnels through hundreds of mountains where 100+ trains pass through, and it's all under one roof.
Ralph Waldo Emerson once quoted that nothing great can ever be achieved without enthusiasm. I have a lot of enthusiasm. This is Northlandz in Flemington, New Jersey. Northlandz is the world's largest model railroad. Well, I guess, everybody has a passion for something. My thing was trains. I had trains around the Christmas tree as a kid. Wherever I lived, I'm planning track plans, and then over 18 years, I added 5 basements onto the house. And from that, I got fairly good at making mountains and bridges and design work, and we decided to give it to the world. So we tore it all down, bought this land, built Northlandz. Any given day, we run between 85 and 90 trains. Some of the details in Northlandz inside, about 40,000 feet of track, about 4,000 buildings, over 400 bridges. Many of the mountains in here are 3.5 stories high. Most things in here are scratch built. Underneath the entire superstructure, there's enough lumber to build about 42 large houses. It takes a few hours to go through for the average person to see everything. We went millions into debt to build this place. Everybody thought we were nuts. And the only one that believed in what I wanted to do was my wife, and she was totally with me on this, big time. It's an artistic endeavor. It's a gift to the world of what I can do, and it makes a lot of people happy.
Santa Claus is coming to town. What? It's April. But never fear, Santa's here to spread some cheer. He says that's what Santa does best, even during times like these. And thanks to grants and donations, Santa Dave has delivered smartphones to senior citizens in a Chicago suburb to help them communicate with their families. He's also been online reading bedtime stories to local boys and girls, helping create some good memories during difficult times. You could look at it and say it's a media blitz, and maybe there's some jealousy from Donder and Blitzen, but they're stuck outside where they have to rough it. They can't Zoom or Skype. All they can do is hoof it. So it's up to the big man and his big presents. You said presents? I said presents. Just seeing him's of the essence of holiday magic for seniors, kids, and teens, delivering smiles despite COVID-19. All right, Franklin Academy High School is in Malone, New York. You guys are fantastic. I'm Carl Azus for CNN.